Peter Hoyle was part of the 18th century settling of the North Carolina Piedmont by German and Scots-Irish immigrants traveling the great Philadelphia Wagon Road south through the Shenandoah Valley and into the Carolinas. The house and outbuildings are located near the 1754 land grant of Peter Hoyle and on his son, John Hoyle's 1765 land grant. This was also the site of Hoylesville, 1817, the first federal post office in present-day Gaston County. Andrew Hoyle, grandson of Peter, was the first postmaster and remained so until his death in 1857. Hoylesville, as the vicinity of his farm was known, served as the center of political and economic activity in the area. The house was purchased by Hoyle Historic Homestead Incorporated in 1991 to preserve and restore this visible reminder of our regional history. In 1993, the house was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Soon after the house was purchased, began a long process to preserve and restore architectural detail of the house dating to its original construction. In 1998, the south facade and porch, original front of the house, was restored. Subsequently, a mid-20th century addition to the east side was removed. Termite-damaged structural components of the original house were replaced. The east porch was restored. Missing exterior weatherboards were replaced. The exterior was painted with a prime coat. Flooring in the main block was removed to add a support system of pressure-treated floor joist around the termite-damaged original floor joist. A new subfloor was installed in the main block. Ground floor, the west porch was removed and restored to its late 19th century condition, and stone steps were restored to the east porch. Also, in 1998, two existing outbuildings adjacent to the house were repainted and mortar joints were repointed respectively. Over the past 23 years, building repairs and stabilization items have been completed to the main house and outbuildings. To date, more than $200,000 has been spent on this historic property. A security fence has been added, fire detection hardware installed, as well as security lighting to the main structure to protect this significant landmark. With most of the repair and stabilization projects, archaeological testing and excavations have been conducted at the same time beginning in 1998. Current excavations around the smokehouse are designed to further understanding of the layout of the gas house with respect to other outbuildings on the east side of the main house. The not-for-profit 501c3 Hoyle Historic Homestead Incorporated conducts an open house annually on the second Saturday of September and makes the house available for study and visits by student groups, friends, and descendants of Peter Hoyle, the pioneer namesake. All archaeological sites have somewhere on the site something called a datum, a site datum, a point from which all other measurements for the excavation squares or for the survey information is located. And this particular point is 10 feet off of the porch here, the edge of the porch, and ties in with all of the other excavation squares that have been placed here since we started this project in 1998. We have shovel test information on this same grid, and we can infinitely expand it or contract it as we needed to. So when we first did shovel testing, the grid was a 20-foot grid. When we were down to putting squares in, we're on a 5-foot grid. But we can again expand or contract that so that all of the information from the excavations and from the shovel testing can be located on a map that we have of this 10-acre site, more or less. Okay, that one's done. This is checking again. All right, so now the bubbles are level, and we can set up our grid north, our 0, on the instrument by turning along the sight line here. And I will check it. All right. That is, now I can lock this so that it doesn't move while I 0 the instrument. I'm still on this point, and if I have to tweak it a little bit, I can do it from this one. I can move it this way or this way as I need to. All right, now it's set on the point that will give me the setup for 0 or north. And so right here, there's a movable vernier on the inside, and I'm going to bring it around to where the 2 arrows match, like so. And that's 0. Okay, what I can do now is release this knob, and then the inside vernier stays fixed. The outside one is too, and I move this around to 90. Lock it down. If I need to adjust it a little bit, I can do that. Now we're on east. And I can release the barrel here. We're still level. I can release the barrel and then drop the barrel so that it's on the ground out there when we pull the tape, and then you put the stake at the tape distance, and the vertical crosshair cuts through the center of the stake, drive it in the ground, put a stake nail on the top, and you have gone from 0 to 90 over the datum to a new point, anywhere along that east line. Okay, when we started, after we found the datum, the idea was to tie in with the squares that were dug in 2013.
Right.
And we had the easting and northing for the northeast corner of those units. And we came down here a number of feet in order to be able to put a couple of stakes along this line that we could then move the instrument down here, set it up, and then turn an angle so that we were reestablishing our north-south line on the east-west line that would give us the corner of 1 or 2 or however many we wanted to do of the squares that we dug in 2013. And then we took our tapes and taped off, because it was, I think, 65 feet north of our grid east-west line.
Yes.
And the idea was to drive the stakes in squares that, not the ones that we had dug, but the ones that were adjacent to the squares that we had dug, so that we could further our understanding of the information that we had gotten in 2013 when the project dug several squares in the area around the pump, with the idea that at that time to reconstruct a facsimile of the gas house which was identified at that location, got a photograph of that. And then, in addition to that, adjacent to the smokehouse was an interesting lean-to structure that was right on that we wanted to develop further an understanding of how that tied in with the operation of the Hoyle family farm.
Right. What was interesting is that the proximity to the house, potential of having some really good kitchen detritus and things like that, which we found. We found a lot of different types of stoneware and earthenware. Of course, a lot of modern trash that was on the top 6 inches. But we did come across a lot of interesting metalwork as well.
Exactly.
Which is kind of interesting because the proximity to the smokehouse, finding things like hooks and bars and things that could have been used within this building.
Within the smokehouse itself is part of the, if you want to think about it, furniture, smokehouse furniture for hanging sides of beef or pork or whatever else was being processed.
Tooth. We found a pig tooth.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, and it was interesting because we did discover a feature, a very important feature that I feel, and I know you feel the same, warrants further investigation.
Yeah. What is a feature? Archaeologists use that term a lot, and probably it bears maybe a moment to identify what an archaeological feature is.
Well, a feature isn't necessarily something that is immovable. You know, this smokehouse is a feature.
There you go.
However, features can be moved. We can remove them. They can come out. But it is something of significant interest that we investigate. And in this case, we found what looked like a pathway, or perhaps more of a patio-type formation of rocks that were intentionally placed and in an east-west pattern. And in looking back at historical photographs, we can see that there appeared to have been a path that came off this area. Whether that's what that was, we don't know.
There is significant possibility of a small architectural feature, kind of a lean-to shed that was located adjacent to the smokehouse, and that when we came over here, we were able to identify a couple of places, remnants of I guess would be the connection between the lean-to shed and the brick of the smokehouse, and then on the ground here at the corner, a couple of places of stones that were associated with whatever this architectural feature was.
Right.
We're going to walk over to where, after we set up the grid, after we established the grid and got back to it, where we want to excavate based on the questions that we have, because we saw in imagery and we saw in the work done at the 2013 project that there were artifacts here associated with things going on between here and what would have been the kitchen of the house to the west of where we're standing right now. So with that in mind, archaeology is a destructive technology in the sense that you cannot undig a site. So your design also is dependent upon you using the correct tools for recovering the information that will help you answer the question that you have for this particular site. So we laid out the squares. They're 5-foot squares, and they're oriented on our grid, north, south, east, west. And our unit of analysis, the measuring point of each one of the squares, is our southeast corner. So the stake of record on the notes for this particular excavation this year is based on the southeast corner. And there were several southeast corners that were noted, and the notes are carefully curated where we are at the museum right now. But, okay, we're here, and we've laid out where we want to go based on information we had before we started. The squares are staked,
Yep.
and now we want to dig. How are we going to do that?
Well, so we have our 4 stakes. We have done our string line to demarcate where the boundary for our square. And we take a flat edge shovel, and we do what's called schnitting. And it's a German term meaning to cut. So very carefully, we start a little bit on the inside of the square, and we skim. All we're trying to do is to make a clean surface, to get the top grass off, weeds, as many shallow roots as possible. So that way we have a very fresh top of the soil to begin our excavation.
All right, now when we snit off the grass and the roots and the things like that, we also have a screen, a sifting screen, set up adjacent to the square and hopefully on a side away from the square where we might want to dig next.
Right.
You always don't want to have to move your back dirt pile. So the sifted dirt is called back dirt. And so we will create a back dirt pile when we schnit, when we carefully skim the dirt off, and we do it in small, what are called lifts. So you might have a lift that's maybe 2 or 3 centimeters. Or in our case, we're working in an English system, the lift will be about 1 inch. And we're digging in 6-inch levels, half foot. And we find that most of the information that we're looking for is going to be within that first 6-inch level, and maybe even within half of that first level. So here we are, we're standing here, we have our flat shovels, we're very carefully schnitting the dirt and putting it in the sifting screen, and our partner in the screen is shaking the screen to separate the dirt from any possible artifacts. And it's really interesting that you may not see anything in the shovel, but it pops out when it's separated from the dirt in the screen.
It sure does.
Anything else?
It's handy to keep a pocket magnet with you at all times when you're sifting, because things that metallic, magnetic things can go unnoticed. You run a magnet over the screen and all of a sudden all these things start popping up onto your magnet, and nails and tacks and buttons and things that you didn't see to the naked eye. There they are.
Good point. So it's not just a matter of sifting the dirt, but it's also knowing that this being a historic property, that there will be metal artifacts that we will be concerned about as well.
Absolutely.
Beginning on June 2nd, 2021, and finishing on June 30, 5 field school students and volunteers conducted excavations in the vicinity of the smokehouse and gas house, respectively. The smokehouse was also the site of an additional lean-to structure that was further investigated at this time. The site grid was reestablished in 3 squares, 560 north, 565 east, 565 north, 565 east, and 565 north, 560 east were dug to the bottom of level 1.5 foot below the existing ground surface. Squares 560 north, 565 east, and 565 north, 565 east were dug to the bottom of level 2, 1 foot below the existing ground surface. The recovered artifacts classes included ceramics, glass, metal, faunal, and modern materials. Ceramic categories include low-fired earthenware, 19 pieces. Redware, 10 pieces. Creamware, 9 pieces. Pearlware, 1 piece. Whiteware, 21 pieces. And stoneware, 69 pieces. Ceramics were about equally divided between level 1 and level 2, with the majority being stoneware. 845 fragments of glass were recovered with a distribution of both architectural glass and container glass. The highest count of container glass was in square 565 North, 565 East, level 1, closer to the corner of the smokehouse and gas house. The greatest number of architectural glass fragments were located in 565 North, 560 East, level 1, closer to the east side of the porch. 277 metal fragments were recovered, and most were either cut nails early or wire nails later. 3 fragments of bar stock were recovered, indicating storage rather than use. A blacksmith's forge during the 2000 excavation has been identified well south of the current work area. 1 metal mason jar lid with intact milk glass seal was recovered from 565 North, 565 East, level 2. Faunal remains were relatively rare, with a few bone fragments recovered from 560 North, 565 East, level 2. A single pig molar, Sus scrofa domesticus, was recovered from 565 North, 565 East, level 2. Modern items were recovered in level 1 of the 3 squares and includes miscellaneous form plastic pieces, 5 plaster doll head pieces, 3 modern .22 caliber bullet casings, plastic buttons, and 1 linoleum fragment. Overall, the units produced an ample amount of artifacts that provided an adequate picture of what was happening at the lean-to storage shed near the smokehouse and gas house.